Do you want to know how I turned this into this? Today we're going to talk about chuck rolls. There are some crazy good secret stakes in this chuck roll that a lot of people don't know about, but I'm going to show you how to break down today. And did I mention this whole thing cost me $4.69 per pound, and we're going to get all these different cuts and some ground beef. It's going to be great. I cannot wait for you to come with me. Let's go. The chuck primal cut is home to some really awesome pieces of beef. The chuck is the cow's shoulder. All day long, the cow walks around in fields and grazes on grass. It causes that shoulder muscle to get lots and lots of work. What happens in a muscle group with a cow is the more work it gets, the more flavor it gets. Also, the tougher that cut of meat. I'm gonna teach you today how to maximize those cheaper cuts that come from the chuck and make them super flavorful and tender at the same time. When I think about beef tenderness, I always go back to what one of my instructors said in culinary school. Now, he kind of looked like Sam Elliott, so if you don't know what Sam Elliott, he kind of had a cowboy look to him, even though he had a very Chicago accent. He said the most tender cuts on the cow are furthest away from the hoof and the horn. The chuck has some steaks that dance that line between tenderness and flavorful. We want to get that in the middle. We want as tender as possible and as flavorful as possible. So there are some cuts in the chuck that dance that line beautifully. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to Bespoke Post for sponsoring this video.
Bespoke Post is a monthly membership club delivering awesome boxes to top shelf goods from under the radar brands. Beyond its subscription boxes, Bespoke Post allows you to purchase individual items ranging from outdoor gear, barware, home and kitchen goods, clothing, and more. All on the brand's site under the shop.
This right here is a cocktail smoking and infusion kit that they have at Bespoke Post. As you can see, I've got an old fashioned here that I have smoked. Now, if you've been to some high quality bars around the country, you'll see that they charge a premium for a smoked cocktail. That's one of the biggest trends right now in cocktails is to smoke everything. Many of the small businesses in the shop are US based. So you are supporting US based companies when you buy from Bespoke Post. To smoke your cocktail, it's super easy. There are some special wood chips available on the shop at bespokepost.com. You take your torch, you light up your wood chips, okay, until you get a good flame going, and then you put the cover over it and let that thing smoke. Cocktails, ice, everything really brings in that smoky flavor. I usually like to smoke them for about 30 seconds, and then it really gives a nice smoky flavor to your cocktail. I'm kind of a bourbon guy, so I love to smoke bourbon cocktails. Try it. I want you to go pick one up at bespokepost.com. Go check it out. This cocktail is amazing. To get your own smoking and infusion kit, go to bespokepost.com/wizard. Support the channel, support local businesses, support the companies that support our channel. We have a mission. We're doing it together. Let's go. Pick one of these up and enjoy yourself a nice smoked cocktail. I'll enjoy one right now, by the way. The first question is, what is this thing? This is a beef chuck roll. When you go to a Sam's, a Costco, you're gonna have to talk to someone in the meat department and you're gonna have to tell them, I want a beef chuck roll. I wanted to show you these three beef chuck rolls. I got them from 3 different places. I got this one from Costco. I got this one from Sam's. And I got this one from a place called the Chef's Store. I found 3 different places in my town that have chuck rolls. As I was at Costco, I talked to someone in the meat department. I said, do you have a whole chuck roll? And he goes, sure. He goes back, he brings it out to me. He goes, hey, what are you gonna do with this thing? He told me a story about how he hasn't sold a whole chuck roll in like 6 months. And then last week, a person came up and wanted a whole chuck roll. He didn't quite understand why someone would buy a whole chuck roll. He goes, what are you gonna do with this thing? I don't know which one of you out there was the person who bought this chuck roll, But please go to your butcher, go to Sam's, go to Costco, ask them for the whole chuck roll. I'm gonna show you how to break it down. Let's start taking control and finding all of the cool butcher cuts that are in a chuck roll, that are in some of these larger cuts of meat, and let's break it down ourselves. All right, let's talk about some gear. This is a 10-inch breaking knife, okay? It's a long knife with a curved end. This is a big piece of meat, and we need a big knife to deal with it. Now, for some of our more precision cuts, we're gonna need a 6-inch boning knife. Both these knives are essential if you are going to do any of these big projects, so go pick one up. I'll put an Amazon link in the description. Go check it out. So this is our chuck roll taken out of the package. Here we go. So a little bit of orientation. I flipped this over to the back side of it. This is actually the start of the ribeye. The first cut we're gonna make, we're gonna take the chuck eyes off of here, and the chuck eye is that first little cut right here. That is technically the start of the ribeye. Let's take the chuck eye roll off first. Now here is where we are focusing. You can see how this kind of circular motion is. This down here is where we're gonna separate, where this muscle meets that muscle. Now the good part is when you're doing this, there is a natural seam between the two. So you're just gonna kind of use your fingers, right, to find that natural seam. And then we're gonna just help it out with a knife. And this is our chuck eye roll. You see how I get my fingers in there and then it just separates. And then anytime you can't separate with your fingers, you're just gonna have your knife help it along. And pull it up and then just cut where the connective tissue is. Connective tissue, cut. Here we go. This is our Denver steak right here that goes along the bottom. So we are just taking off this piece right on top, because our Denver steak is also a delicious secret cut that I'm gonna show you about. It's all very easy to do. We're not making huge cuts. That's the big important part. No huge cuts, just little tiny cuts. So once I get it to about, I don't know, 5 or so inches in, then I can open this up and look at it. So as soon as I get past this Denver steak, I can go ahead and cut this piece off. This area right here is where I'll get my chuck eyes and a good sized chuck roast out of it. But from here, I will cut down right here, just through what I've already gone by horizontally, I will cut vertically. And then this is where I'll take my chuck eyes from. We'll come back to this in a minute. Once I've cleared this, I'm gonna cut straight down. Then I get some really awesome chuck roast off this back end. So let's see, it's kind of hard to do on camera, but I'm gonna come way over here and then cut all the way down. And I'll work on this in a minute to get my Denver steaks out of this side. Now, I have this back end of this chuck roll, and it still has all the great flavorful pieces of meat, and we're gonna go ahead and cut a couple of chuck roasts. Depending on how big you want your chuck roasts, right? We can make them, we can cut this whole thing in half. There's not really any rules when we get to here, but you want a big kind of block of meat here. So we'll do this, and then maybe we'll cut this one in half. Now from here, this is a great chuck roast. We can go back and clean up each individual piece, but this is how we're gonna start, okay? So I'll go back, I can clean that up in a little bit. We can tie that up, that'll make a great chuck roast. And now with this end cut, you got a kind of scraggly pieces off here. I will cut this side to kind of square it up, and then we have a big chuck roast. Now you can decide if you don't want to make like 5 chuck roasts out of this. I'm gonna go ahead and put this, cut this up and put it in my grind pile. The chuck roll is very versatile where it has almost no waste because we can grind everything. And I love to grind my own ground beef. I will put a few chuck roasts and put those in the freezer, and then I will do also a big pile of grind. So this is the chuck eye portion of what we cut off earlier. So what we're gonna do now is go inch, inch and a quarter, something like that. Just however thick you want them, but you can see this ribeye almost looks like a little tiny baby ribeye. I called this one in my last video, the ribeye's little brother. So we're just gonna take that breaking knife and just kind of make a inch and a quarter or so steak. The muscle groups are not as tight as when you have a whole ribeye, when you have a ribeye steak. So you're gonna have to treat it a little differently. But again, we're paying $5 a pound. We're not paying $15 a pound. So we're gonna go ahead and just make our chuck eye steaks. After the meat is kind of like separating a little bit, you know we're kind of towards the end of the chuck eye. There's only a few of them in each chuck rolls. So we'll go ahead and grind the rest. But here's our 3 chuck eye steaks. You can grill them. You can do a hard sear in a cast iron pan. Anything you want to do with them. They are delicious. Check them out. I did a chuck eye steak video, and in that video I asked that I would do a whole breakdown of the chuck roll if we got to 500 likes. I severely underestimated you guys. We got over 12,000 likes on that video. That is crazy. Thank you all so much. For this next one, let's see if we can beat it. Hit that like button and let's see if we can beat 12,000 in the first couple of weeks. I just couldn't be more happy. I asked, you guys delivered. Thank you so much. So now we're gonna pull out the Denver steaks. If you've never had a Denver steak, you're in for a treat. It kind of eats like a strip, okay? So it's this part right here. You can see all that intermuscular fat in there, just kind of like a strip. This is one of the undervalued cuts on the whole cow. This is awesome. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you how to separate this Denver steak from the rest of it, and then I'm gonna show you how to cut up a couple steaks. And these Denver steaks are delicious. If you've never had a Denver steak, you're in for a treat. So this is our Denver steak right here. You can see how it kind of even looks like a strip steak. It's a little tougher than a strip steak, but if you cook it right, cook a nice medium rare, it's gonna be delicious. So we're gonna take about an inch cuts, and I'm gonna take the whole thing all the way down. And we're gonna go ahead and trim. I'm gonna cut these because I like to trim afterward, but that's what it looks like right there. Look at all that intermuscular fat. That's gonna melt down and be delicious. We're just gonna put these over here, and then I'm gonna keep cutting them. Inch steaks, here we go. As you're taking the Denver steaks off, you'll notice that when you start to cut, we'll get to a point where there's a natural seam in here, but also the grain starts to change. Now look at that side, and then look at the other side. You can see the grains, the fibers get to be a little bit longer, and it looks a little less like these ones that we have, these nice ones we have here. We are getting to the end of our Denver steak. So at this point, we can change this, we can turn this into grind, or we can make tie it up and make another chuck roast out of it. Both would be great preparations. We're gonna go ahead and take these Denver steaks back, and I'm gonna start trimming these up. So again, we get a little tail on here. What I like to do is, because they're so long, is cut each one in half. That way you get a normal steak portion. The great thing about trimming your own steaks is if you wanna keep the fat on there, keep the fat on there. If you want it more lean, take it off. It's completely up to you. You don't have to take whatever the meat cutter at the grocery store gives you. Here we go. So there's a nice Denver steak. We're gonna go ahead and go through here and just trim these up. We got 8 really nice Denver steaks out of this. I mean, depending on how big the chuck roll is and how thick you want them, these are a great steak to grill, to hit in a cast iron pan, just like the chuck eyes. Whatever you want to do, whatever you do to a strip steak, you can do to this steak right here. You know, medium at most, because it is out of the chuck, so it's going to get a little tough. So if medium is the highest I would go on these steaks. Also, what you can do with the chuck is cut it up into stew meat. So you can cut it into little squares and basically do braised beef dishes, you can do soups, you can do all kinds of things. I'm gonna take all the beef that we saved for a grind, and I'm going to put it through my meat grinder. Now, this meat grinder is from meatyourmaker.com. The link's in the description. Check it out. This is if you're gonna do a lot of grinding, you need a dedicated meat grinder. This one's a great piece of equipment. It makes it so much easier to go ahead and grind if you're gonna do a big portion at a time. So if we're gonna be getting these chuck rolls, we got quite a few pounds here to put through the grinder. We're gonna put this through 2 times, look at the consistency, and see how many more times we need to put it through, but at least 2 times. I'm gonna turn down the volume. It's gonna get a little loud in here. We did our first pass through the grinder. Now it's time for the second one, and then I think we'll be good to go. Look at all the meat that we got today. So we got 3 chuck eye steaks. We got 2 2.5 pound chuck roasts. I got 2.5 pounds of stew meat. We got let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8. We got 8 Denver steaks and over 8 pounds of ground beef. It's crazy the amount of meat that we got from that whole chuck roll, but also the variety. If you liked this one, I want you to check out another budget cut. I did a video on that steak, and I want you to click on it right here. We'll see you on the next one.